and everything seemed to be better. I had an apartment in Queens, and I was running down Queens Boulevard. Now, I want to stop again and say HIV is a very quiet disease. You could have HIV and you could not know it, all right? There may not be any symptoms, specifically now because there's early testing. You can go to a drugstore and buy a test. You can get confidential testing right away. Back in 1983, there were no tests. And so I must have had this for a long time because I'm running and I feel very dizzy and I see a purple lesion on my neck. And that lesion is called Kaposi sarcoma. Basically what it is blood cancer. And I went to Elmhurst Hospital and they wouldn't touch me. They were walking around me and they said, well, you got to go to St. Luke Roosevelt Hospital in the 50s in Manhattan. I did the next day, but I had a friend to go with me and he came with me and he stood there holding my hand while they told me that I had cancer in the lungs because it was spreading to my lungs and I had AIDS and I'd probably live only 5 more years. This is what they told me. Well, they took out a piece of my lung, they put me on radiation, and guess what? I did the marathon that year. I lived. I fooled them. This is 26 years ago, and I'm alive. And I didn't tell my mother right away because my father was very sick. He had cancer, and he died a few months later. But I started to have a good life. And whenever I had a problem, what I did was I talked about it. This was scary to have. I was 26 years old and I was diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. That's hard, isn't it? But I kept living. And at that time, I was doing a lot of bicycling. I didn't have a car, so I bicycled and I started traveling and I discovered I could bring my bicycle and I started to bicycle all over the country, all over the world, in Europe. I cycled from Trafalgar Square, London to Red Square, Moscow in 1989. And you've heard of the Berlin Wall? I lifted my bike up over the Berlin Wall. At that point, it was just matted barbed wire. I lifted the bike and I flashed my passport. And isn't that cool? I was in East Berlin. I was back to Berlin 2 years ago. Now Berlin's all built up, but at the time it looked like a war zone. It was a war zone, all broken down, all dilapidated buildings and broken glass everywhere. It was terrible. And lots of vacant lots. And isn't it cool that I got to see this stuff? Now, why are the good things happening to me now? What am I doing differently? I'm talking about what I feel. I'm not keeping it inside. I know high school could be tough sometimes. You go to high school and the kids kind of pick on you. Suppose, suppose you're like a heavy-set girl. And your parents are relatively poor and you don't have nice clothing. And your mother thinks it's cool to put the little pink ribbons in your hair. So you wear little pink ribbons and you come into school and all the other girls are like, oof, we could talk to her. And she's standing there all by herself. And then there's this real cool dude. You know the type, the real cool dude comes along. He's, hey baby, oh my God, look at that butt. Look at that butt is smoking. Ooh. Hey, how you doing? My parents are working. You want to come home with me after school? Okay. Hey, babe, I don't have any condoms. You still want to do it? What do you think she'll say? Okay. That's right, exactly like that. Because, why? She wants to feel better, right? Yeah, she wants to feel better. Low self-esteem. But we all... Right, exactly. But we all have low self-esteem in different ways. So what I'm trying to... That's what pride's about. HIV and pride. If you like yourself and you care about yourself, you're not going to make the mistakes. You're going to use your head. Now, sex is available in schools. We know that you guys are having sex. We know it. By the statistics, we know you guys are having sex. And we could come in and we could tell you, don't have sex, it's bad. First of all, sex isn't bad. Sex is beautiful. If you know your partner, if you can trust your partner. If you could ask the question, do you want to get tested before we try it? And it might take a couple weeks to get the results. And if the person is willing, because you remember, if you have sex with someone that you do not know, you're having sex with every single person that person had sex with. Because all the germs and all the bacteria are still there and transmitted. Remember that. It may be a tad exaggerated, but there's a reality to it. So you should know your partner, and you should be able to ask these questions. You should be able to talk about it. Trust takes a long time to develop. I remember I was in one of these presentations. By the way, I've done over almost 100 of these this year, and I've reached close to 11,000 kids. And I remember one girl, she said to me, well, I found the perfect man. This man is so wonderful. He knows everything about me. He gets into my mind, and I can, oh my God, it's what, I said, how long did you know him? 3 days. I said, but do you really know him? She was a high school kid. I'm like, it takes a long time to really trust someone. It takes years sometimes to really develop true trust. So that's why know your partner. Love your partner. Really feel comfortable to say, well, let's go get tested. Let's be safe. And that's what you should be able to do. But if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling left out of the world, that's not the time to have sex, because you might be having sex for the wrong reason. Or you might be having sex because of peer pressure, or because you peer pressure, the other kids are doing it, or because you just don't want to feel the pain anymore. And sometimes life is painful. So anyway, I lived with HIV, and in 1996, I got very sick. And they didn't know what was wrong, so I went to a doctor, and he says, well, your T cells are 0. Remember I talked about the immune system? So my T cells were gone. And the doctor said, and funny, at this point I was a writer. I had a column in a magazine on holistic healing. And holistic healing is healing the whole body. So basically, I thought that you don't take medications, you know. I thought that healing, you use alternate methods, meditation, prayer, and all sorts of nutrition. You heal the whole body. So basically, I didn't want to take medication, but my doctor says, you've got to take those medications. And I remember one other time, about 6 years before that, I was put on AZT. If you've seen Rent, AZT was the first medication for AIDS. AZT, a little light and dark blue pill. And I took it, and I went on a bicycle trip in Morocco, and I was cycling up a hill, and I felt very sick. I was in the Atlas Mountains. So I knew as an athlete that it was the AZT, so I threw it out. And I came back to the United States. I told my doctor, I says, I'm not taking that medication. It's making me sick. And he looked at me and says, well, if you don't take that medication, you're going to die. I was crying. I was so upset. And then he said I looked sick. I said, I don't look sick. And I went out, and there was this big, heavy-set nurse out there. She goes, what you crying for, baby? I said, the doctor told me I was sick and I was going to die. Well, don't listen to him. He's an asshole. Go get a second opinion. And I did. And I didn't need to take the medication. So remember, if someone tells you something that you don't quite trust and you don't feel, you can ask for someone else. For every one asshole in this world, there's 9 beautiful people. Remember that. So if one person does something to you that's bad and upsets you, find the other people. So basically, what happened was my life is pretty good. I live every day with HIV. I live a normal life, and I'm a pretty successful writer. I'm a poet. And I've had some great accolades for my poetry. And I write. I have a play that's going off Broadway. I mean, I decided to come back to back and talk to you guys because when I heard the infection rates and I heard that it's all increasing, that more people are getting HIV than ever, I was stunned. I used to do this in the 90s. I used to go around to different places, not high schools, but different colleges and whatnot, and talk about this. So I decided to design a program, and I wrote a play. Now I have 2 plays. You're getting our second play, which opened in December. And I want you to sit back and listen. And I want you to watch very carefully because all the characters are going to be playing 2 parts.